So you had a pretty long day today with 3 games. I actually want to start with the first game against Team Solo Mid. It was kind of a long game with, to most viewers, it seemed like it didn't have a lot of action. But you actually played that game very, very safe, and there were a lot of trade calls you made. During a game, could you explain a little bit why that game didn't have a lot of kills?
Didn't have so much kills. If I remember, I was playing as Malphite, I was Kennen. So what we want to do basically is we want to fight with your flash up, like flash against flash. We are gonna be fine because as long as we like dodge the Malphite ultimate or something, we are gonna win the fight because we can just kite back and have a counter engage with Kennen or whatever we have. But there's a lot of like. We are trying to push a lot of like turrets or whatever, but we are noticing that as long as Malphite will like stay as 5, we couldn't hit turrets so much. So yeah, we just had problems hitting turrets while being grouped because we didn't have any poke or anything like this. So it was hard to force them out of turret and then take it. So we need to control the map overall, and also we had 3 really early Drake, so we are just trying to not make as many mistakes, go for the 5 Drakes, and well, as long, when we had 4 Drake, we will just try to get a Baron, for example, get Baron vision and sneak a Baron or something like this. So we are just trying to play the map since we had the global advantage early game.
It seems a little bit like most of the games that I'm watching here, you guys are playing from behind in the early game a little bit. Do you think that there's a specific reason why some of your players are maybe getting caught out, or you might be around mid-game with a deficit and have to come back?
I definitely think that we have some kind of issues early on. Maybe like half of the games we didn't have like the... While we picked champions, we don't necessarily think about like his like strength or early game or whatever. So we just like pick for overall team comp, what is good against their team comp. If we think about like team fight most like 80% of the time. So it happens that sometimes we're gonna have like a really bad early game team against a really good early to mid game. So we tend to have like always the late game, but sometimes we just fall a bit too behind early. But yeah, it happens. Like sometimes we might not have the best communication. We might forget about the TP or something like this. So I think we have to work more on our like early communication, because as soon as we are grouped as 4 or 5, we have like not so many issues like about shot calling or things like this. But early on, it tends to be that we don't hear or forget about some things.
It's interesting that you mentioned that maybe you're not thinking about lane matchups or early game pressure as much when you're picking your team compositions, because a lot of European players I've talked to or heard comment are a little bit afraid to pick for a team comp if they feel like there's a strong counter matchup in the lane. And you did mention that you have a little bit of struggles in the early game. Could you explain but your communication is better late. Could you explain the thought process that kind of led you to deciding, okay, we're going to just pick for a late game team comp?
Well, we don't only pick for late game. Like we obviously still think about the matchup a bit. We try to, like, if we can have a 50-50 matchup, or like the worst is probably like a 40-60, and be much better in team fight or mid to late game. We are gonna probably opt for this pick instead of the matchup would have like be 60-40 early to mid game and then fall really behind late game. Because in my opinion, games tend to be like it's really hard to close up a game at 20 minutes or something like this, unless you have like more occasion maybe. But it's really hard to close up games really early, so we tend to pick like a mid to late game comp. But yeah, we still think about the lane matchup a bit. It depends about the draft we want to do. It depends about the teams we play against. Some small things like this.
Okay. And in the game against LGD Gaming, you guys were able to have a little bit of a rough start, but turn the first game around last week. This game, it seemed like they were just a little bit more proactive. What do you think had changed between last week when you faced LGD and this week?
I felt like they played really without pressure or anything like this. So from what I didn't watch the game yet, but from what I've noticed that, as you said, they are proactive kind of on every lane, and they are just like playing really aggressive on every single lane. So it was hard to know where we wanted to pressure or things like this on the map. But yeah, overall, we had like, if we would have, it's the same effect. Like, for example, I picked Malphite into Olaf, which is not a good matchup. It's like, it's okay, I can farm, but I'm never gonna kill him or put him low or put so much pressure on him. But they had Diana, Graves, so they had like kind of immobile mid laner and Graves, so I opted to Malphite to have really good team fights and engage. But we just like fall a bit too behind early on, and just like snowball a lot the advantage since that Diana with TP that was split pushing, and she had 1 or 2 early kills. So she was really like, as soon as she started going on side lane, she was farming everything, every camp, the lane as well, and she was 2 or 3 levels up. And at some point it was the same for Olaf as well. So it was really hard to just come back from this.
Okay. Do you think that that might be a good strategy against Origen in the future, is to just pick for lane matchups and hope they snowball out of control?
I think it's good as long as you make a big mistake, because if we take, like, even if we are behind a bit early, if we take like one good fight and we win it, we are not even gonna be behind, we are gonna be ahead. So it's, in my opinion, risky. Like, obviously if you have really good early game comp and you play really good on early game to mid game and you don't make mistakes, then it can be really good. But in my opinion, it's really risky to do that. You still need some kind of late game-ish heroes.
Speaking of getting really, really strong late game matchups, you fell behind quite a bit in the last game versus Sunday. You were down, I forget how many kills, I think at least 5 when I checked, by mid-game, or...
Yeah, 4 or 5, yeah.
But at the same time, your team actually had a lot of good flanks on your part. You managed to make a lot of plays to try to come back. How do you, I guess, how did you know that, we were okay? What was team communication like at that point?
Basically, what we wanted to do is, like, when we see a good opportunity, we'll just, like, not necessarily go for it blindly, but we'll try to think as much as we can, like, yeah, this is good because of this. But we knew that we were really far behind. But in the same time, Kog'Maw was really strong. Niels had a lot of items, and he got... what happened is that that fed heroes, and Niels got a lot of, like, 2 shutdowns or something at some point. So he had 2 or 3 items really fast, and we were trying to play around this. But in the same time, he was the only one actually dealing damage. So it was really hard for us to make him able to hit targets, and in the same time us not dying, because they are super strong. Like, anyone could kill us really. So it was really hard to do both in the same time, make him deal damage and not getting killed. But yeah, that's it.
Niels has had a pretty strong performance, I would say, throughout this group stage. Do you feel confident does it make you feel more confident knowing that your bottom lane has been pretty stable?
I think our bottom lane overall is quite good. I don't know how much I will rank it and stuff, but I'm confident in all of my teammates really. It's just that Niels and Mithi like to play aggressive heroes, and and I said like they don't really like to have a losing matchup, but even when they have a losing matchup, they tend to at least do 50-50 or have the same CS or something. So like I wouldn't say like no matter what happens, but most of the time they tend to do really good, like even when they have a losing lane. So I guess they're playing really good overall.
I've noticed in some of the drafts today you picked Kog'Maw fairly early. Your team did, and I know that you have a fairly collaborative draft phase. Can you explain the logic behind like the early pick Kog'Maw?
It was just due to the team that we are playing against, and we are thinking after the first week like what is the position in the game, like where does Kog'Maw fit and how strong is he and things like this. And we thought against the LGD and KT that Kog'Maw could be really good because they often play browsers and stuff like this, and as long as you have a control mage mid laner as long as you have a control mage mid laner and that your Kog'Maw gets farm and you're okay / a bit behind early, you will win no matter what, because the bruiser is gonna fall really far behind in mid game because he cannot hit targets due to the control mid laner, and Kog'Maw can freely hit because of the control mage mid laner as well. So I think, as you said, the problem with this is the early game, because Kog'Maw needs always to have someone to help him when he gets farm on side lanes or whatever. So maybe it's about like or early game and how we play it overall.
And LGD made the decision to swap in Flame different from last week where they played Acorn. As a top laner, how does that change your preparation going into the tournament? Were you prepared for LGD to play either Flame or Acorn?
I think it doesn't change anything for me. It will change if the meta was like not the meta, but if they would play like really different champions. Let's say Flame will have a lot of counter picks, like let's say like maybe Fiora, Riven, Kennen or stuff like this, which he does, but I don't think he would have maybe pulled them. But yeah, if someone have like really good counter picks and the other play more like of a simple style with the average champion, bruiser champion like Olaf, Darius, etc. For me, it doesn't change anything, because I don't think you can do so much alone. So it's just about like how he play with his team compared to what he does individually. Like I think it's so little to compare a player to another at Worlds.
So lane swapping and teams that can lane swap well, teams that communicate well in the early game and can lane swap seems to be a big factor in this tournament. A lot of people are talking about it. How do you feel about Origen's ability to pull off lane swaps against the coming opponents in the quarterfinals?
It depends. Lane swapping depends a lot about the draft. The more possibility you have, the better lane swap you're gonna get. For example, if you can catch and also can dive, you're gonna be a lot stronger in lane swap. The people are gonna be scared and they're gonna wonder what you're gonna do, especially if they didn't have vision of you level 1, for example. If it's like a blind lane swap and you get a freeze or something, they're gonna wonder, like, if they are getting a slow push or something, they wonder if you're gonna catch or not. And I don't know, there's so many things to do in lane swap, but the best overall I would say is for us. I don't think we are a weak team in lane swap or either a strong team. I think we do okay overall. We tend to sometimes fall behind, but it's I was saying before that we tend to do more mistakes early than mid and late game.
Thank you very much and good luck.